you look into your pet's eyes, what do you see? A reflection of yourself? A glimpse into a world untamed by human expectations? Or perhaps just a creature sharing the same space, navigating this chaotic world alongside you? Welcome to the Companions Collective, where we dig into the human-animal bond and uncover the messy, beautiful reality of it all. I'm Angela Schneider, your guide through the depths of our shared connection with our companion animals. Join me as we explore the tangled web of love, loss, and everything in between that defines our relationships with the creatures who know us best. We've spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about grief over the loss of our beloved companion animals. And much of the content has revolved around anticipatory grief and the loss of a pet due to a terminal illness or old age. But there are many more types of loss pet guardians can face. Runaways, accidents, surrenders, custody battles, behavioral euthanasia. And they all carry with them trauma and nuanced, complex emotions. My dear friend Coleen Ellis of Two Hearts Pet Loss Center joins me today to unravel those emotions and how guilt and grief intertwine. Welcome back, my friend.
Always, always. Got up this morning. Actually, it was yesterday. I looked at my calendar. I said, no way. Tomorrow, I get to be with her again. Oh,
You fill my cup. Oh my gosh.
I got you.
I'm not faking it. You
Yeah,
fill me
no.
so much. I'm just anyway. Okay, so a couple of months ago, it dawned on me that we spend a lot of time on the podcast talking about pet loss grief, but with respect to um, losing our companion animals to terminal illness, natural events, old age, etc. I did a great couple of episodes with a behavioral expert, and we dug into behavioral euthanasia and how that can affect a pet guardian. Um, Certainly carries with it its own kind of grief and trauma. And at the risk of comparing griefs, which we know we shouldn't do, it's not healthy. But there are other kinds of grief when it comes to pet loss. Let's dig into that. How are the other ways we can lose our pets other than terminal illness and old age?
Let's talk about this one because I have a girlfriend going through this right now, rehoming,
Mm-hmm.
rehoming. And Roberta is always on my heart, because she's a dog trainer. She's a dog trainer, and she rehomed her sweet Enzo who died this past week. And so the grief came up to her again, and it's never left her. Our grief doesn't leave us. It becomes a part of who we are, and we explore it at different times based on season, based on something that hit us, based on something, it pops up and we explore it again. And so rehoming, that's a big one. With sometimes things happen and that might be the best answer for the animal, might be the best answer. But just like euthanasia, Angela, in the definition of euthanasia is good death, fortunate death. But when I'm in the middle of it, nothing feels good about that. Not one thing. And I always caution people who are companioning and walking with, don't tell me what a gift it is we're giving him or her, because it doesn't feel like it right now. I feel awful for the decision I made to do this thing. Okay. So don't tell me how I should feel differently. Just like on rehoming, don't tell me that it was probably the best. And to this day, I don't tell Roberta that. Okay. I want her, if If she's able to say that to me, to say, it was for the best, of which she's never said those words to me, but I know it's in there, okay? But I'm not going to give her those words. It's her journey, it's her emotions. It's something that she needs to come to that conclusion, not me to push her there. That's not my job. That's not my role to do that. So rehoming is a big one. And I'm going to guess I'm a little bit like you. Sometimes I hear stories about rehoming and I immediately get ugly, right? And I'm like, you signed up for this. What do you mean you need to rehome the animal? And I want to tap into my empathetic side, and I want to tap into my side that says, I want to believe and I need to believe for the peace in my heart and the peace in my mind that there's a reason, that there's a legitimate reason for this. And at the end of the day, they could have turned him loose. They could have taken him to the shelter. They could have done a whole bunch of things versus trying. So that's one I want to acknowledge. Another one I want to acknowledge in our world of animals, highly possible, running away. Running away. How many signs do you see in your neighborhood? Lost dog, lost kitty. I was in that situation a few years ago with my little kitty who was gone for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And that's tough, It's tough. It's tough. First of all, what did I do wrong? Where was the hole that he got out? So now I got my guilt that I go through because I didn't have something secured on the perimeter that he got out and something happened. And so there's that an additional layer of guilt with that process. Okay. There's another one in our world today, custody battles.
Mhm.
Custody battles. It's happening. It's happening. And I know there's some states right now, Angela, where the wording and I have an attorney friend who said there's some states right now where the wording is what's in the best interest of the animal. That's the same wording as a child, right?
Interesting.
I know what's in the best interest of the animals to where the animal will go. And so there's that's happening, which is a whole new grief, a whole, different thing that they're still out there, just like rehoming and possibly even running away. They're still out there somewhere, but we're still grieving for the thing we don't have. So there's another one. And I'm so glad you had that professional on to talk about behavior euthanasia, because that is such a big one. Oh my gosh, it is such a big one. And I'm so glad that that got explored.
When we're talking about rehoming, custody battles, runaways, is it is part of the trauma that comes with that due to the fact we're left wondering what happened to our animal? And that,
I,
like, there is very little possibility of closure there. And one of the, for lack of a better word, steps or stages or whatever the hell you want to call them, of healing is acceptance. And if you don't know what's happened to your animal, how can you possibly accept that they're gone?
yeah, on runaway for sure. Runaway for sure. Custody battle might be an open custody battle. Rehoming might be an open relationship. I know with Roberta it was very much an open relationship. She knew exactly what was going on with Enzo. And I run away. That is the one that there's an open wound that says, did he land somewhere else? Did he succumb to what goes on in our neighborhood with coyotes and fox and whatever else might be roaming around? Did that happen? And he was gone for 3 weeks, and I was blessed that he was found. And boy, I tell you what, I love the power of social media. I love the power, and I can tell you, we paid for the robocallers, we paid for the robo faxes, we paid for all these things to happen. I was all in that we made this thing happen. We were going to give it 1000%. And by the grace of God, somebody saw his picture on a Facebook post and he came home. But in those 3 weeks, Angela, it was this big open gaping wound. And literally the day he was found, I kept everything out. I kept his litter box out. I kept everything out. And one of my friends had said to me on Facebook, let us know when he gets home. And I can't tell you how much I held on to that sentence. Let us know when he gets home. And so that's what I kept thinking. And on that day that he did come home, I was just about ready to put everything up. Did it mean I was willing to accept? No, I wasn't. And I don't know if it would have gone out further and if he wouldn't have come home. I'm not quite sure how I would have processed it. So for me to tell you what I believe I would have done it's only surmising what I believe I would have done. Because the one thing I do know for sure is it would to this day still be an open gaping wound that I would still wonder. I would still wonder. And Angela, I got to tell you this, okay? I want us to unpack what I'm saying to you because we as human beings do things with our eyes, okay? Animals do things with their noses. And so when I didn't see a deceased body, to me, there was not a deceased body. He was
Mm.
still out there somewhere. So I want you to play that chess game out for us to take an animal to the vet clinic and the children don't see him go there and they don't see a deceased body. For our pets who didn't get the opportunity to smell that he's gone and he's deceased, they wonder too, is he still out there somewhere? Is he still coming home? And so the power of confirming, not closure, but the power of confirming what's gone on is priceless because and I can recount. I've been in death care now for 37 years, and I can even talk about people who didn't get to go to a funeral, and you never got the confirmation because you didn't see the deceased body, right? And so it's always like, wonder if he's still going to walk through the door. Wonder if when I go back to grandma's, he's just going to come in because it didn't happen. And so there's such power in the eyes of seeing that. There's such power for the animals in their noses to confirm what's happened, and we've got to give that the credit it deserves. It's powerful. And so when they run away, when we don't get to see and say that final goodbye, or we don't maybe have an open relationship in a custody battle or a rehoming, that's tough on our psyche because we do things with our eyes. Okay. And I just am such an advocate of that process for a healthy healing journey. Now, when I don't get to see that body, I was going to have to start to figure out how I was going to come to the conclusion that he was not coming home again. And I thought about it a minute, but just 1 minute, because if I think any more about this, it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy and he won't come home. So I'm not ready to think about it yet. I'm still hopeful and I'm still waiting for him to come home. And so if we have a friend that's in that way, first of all, jump up and help them in every way you can, whether it's walking the neighborhood, hanging up the flyers, employing the robocalls, employing the faxes, whatever it may be. There's a variety of things you can do. Help them with that. And when they, as the pet parent, are ready to say, I maybe need to figure out a way to start moving on here. Then help with what needs to happen there. But don't push it. Don't push it because I want to be hopeful. I want to be hopeful until I'm not, Angela, until I'm not. It's my journey.
Right. And we've spoken often about how grief and guilt knock on the door at the same time, and how you recommend that we invite them both in, sit them down, have a cup of tea and a chat. And how much of that is exacerbated by the shame that can be brought on simply by the fear of judgment of others? Because if we had to give up our pet, if we let our pet get out and run away, we fucked up somehow. It's our fault. And we know there are people out there on the other end of Facebook going, she should have been more careful.
Mhm.
She should have a better job. She should do this. She should do. How do you get around those feelings?
I'm full disclosure, I don't play those games very well. Meaning, I don't need to get invited. Just because you threw it out there doesn't mean I need to come to your party and join in. And so when I have things like that that go on for me, I've got to find the supportive people, the people who know me and love me and care for me, and I've got to dissect it out of the ones that are going to be snarky and sit behind the power of the keyboard and the power of the screen to make judgments. And I guess I'm kind of blessed, Angela. In my circle, I'm not party to that. And man, if I see it happening, I know there's a social site out there next door, and boy, I see a lot of punches, and I see a lot of name calling, and I see a lot of that happens, especially in rehoming. And when I see that out there for my own psyche, there's some things that happen that you kind of say, I just can't look away. When that stuff starts happening, I must look away, because if I get caught up in the negativity of all of that, it just sits up and it takes up space rent free in my head all day long. And I don't want to give it that power. And while we are extremely vulnerable during that time, I got to just tell you, people, please find the people who are positive support to you. Please find the people who are going to walk with you and go out and walk a neighborhood and do whatever, even on a rehome, give you the support you need versus the judgment you don't need. And I think a lot of that, Angela, we willingly show up, we jump in, we let it happen. And that's why I said I'm not good at playing that, because I don't allow it to happen. I just won't take it. I won't, there's a meme I saw quite some time ago. It said, just because somebody started an argument doesn't mean you need to get invited to the party. And I
Wow.
just choose not to. I
Yeah.
choose not to get invited, you know?
Kindness and compassion take less energy than negativity and aggression, don't they?
I think so, and I think but it's a conscious decision. You got to be mindful and say, I'm not going to play. I don't want to be that person that I get frustrated with, or who doesn't make me feel good. I don't want to be that kind of a person. And so to be mindful of being empathetic and if you see somebody, this is my MO. If I see somebody, it's getting a punch maybe on a social site or something, man, I do whatever I can do to message them and say, hey, I'm here. If you need a support, I'm here. And because I want to be different. Let me tell you something. Here's something probably going to get me in trouble one day. But my personal philosophy is, if I disagree with it and I don't say anything, that means I bless it. Okay. And so I am very mindful of the things that, if I don't agree with it, I get out of it immediately. And if I stay in it, then I got to figure out how I'm either going to bless it or I'm going to be of support, one or the other. And that's my own philosophy. And like I said, it will get me in trouble one day. I can guarantee you. But I'm
Well,
good with that.
it sounds like the old adage we grew up with, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. At the risk of
Mhm.
me sounding biblical, I mean.
You know what? I don't know that it's biblical. I think it's a good personal mantra to live by, and biblical or not, why not? I mean, if, and this is my other, philosophy, man, I tell you what, if I could act like my animals all day long with no judgment, no shame, trust and love and unconditional love and all that kind of loyalty, that's what I would rather profess as how I want to be and what I want to be known for when this is all done. And whether it's, a situation where you're shaming yourself for something that was unintentional. I didn't intentionally have that hole in my yard for him to get out of. That wasn't intentional. But Angela, you know what happened? I beat myself up about it. And I said, how on earth didn't I know that hole was there? And that was a process I had to go through as a part of the grieving journey. We have to do that, whether it's processing. And you know what? At the end of the day, let me tell you something. When the situation is out of control, okay, I can't control that he is lost and I can't find him. I can do things to advance me finding him, but there's things in that are out of my control, right? So guilt is in my control. I can control that because it's how I feel. And so that may be the only thing at this juncture that I can control, and I'm going to do it. So don't talk me out of it. Be here to support me. That's all I want you to do. Be here. We are so darn quick to say, Angela, don't feel that way. You would never intentionally leave a hole out there in your yard. You would never intentionally do anything to hurt him. You would never intentionally, get a dog to have to give up a dog. You would never intentionally do that. You know that.
A lot of what we're talking about here is called ambiguous loss. Are there different coping strategies or steps to healing that people can take, or does it all kind of look the same?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. When we have death, here's how I'm going to answer this. And boy, I would love to know somebody with some credentials and their thought on this. When we have a death, I go back to it was a body, he was old. Yes, I made the call to help him, because his quality of life was suffering. So I made the call. Those are all fairly traditional, right? I guess for lack of a better word, I'm going to use that word. But when it's something that's not traditional, like we've been talking about, I believe that there's another layer to the grieving journey because there appears to me to be, let me say it this way, there appears to me to be an additional layer or an exasperated layer of guilt that needs to be unpacked a little bit. And the guilt of rehoming, the guilt of the custody battle, the guilt of, the animal running away, the guilt of those is might take a bit longer to unpack, and it may never be resolved. At the end of the day, it may never be resolved. It may always be a lingering thing right there that says, yeah, I'm going to get through this, but I'm not going to forget that I was the one that did that. And it's still pretty open for me. And so the things that I'm going to need to do to say that goodbye and to begin not my closure because it will never close, but the thing that I'm going to need to do to make movement into my grief journey might need to look at a little bit different in unpacking that guilt aspect of it. Does that make sense? Did that make
Yeah,
sense?
completely. We've talked before about ceremonies and memorials and doing things to honor the life that lived with you for however short or long a period. Can that be a helpful step as well, having a celebration of that life?
It still has to be. Yeah. And, I said this on a podcast I said on last week, and I said, and it may be bigger when it comes to the situations that we've just talked about that I'm not ready to celebrate that life yet. What I need more so is to mourn that loss at this juncture. And
Mm.
I want to be given that permission to cry and to do all those sorts of things. And maybe a year from now, when things are different, a year has passed since he's been gone or the rehoming or whatever, then I may be ready to see it in a little bit different way and to do something in his honor, to raise money for the shelter you work at, to raise money for, for a company who finds lost pets. Whatever it is, make it be significant as to the thing you're going to do so that it supports your mission as the mommy and the parent of all of that. And so I may be ready a year from now. Just because I'm not ready now doesn't mean I can't do it at some point. So there's no there's no problem, there's no reason you shouldn't give it some space, and let it have a little bit of space.
We're often taught in our grief training that we want to move toward healing and feeling whole again. And recently, I've been coming around to the idea that I'm not sure that's what it's about because we aren't broken. There's really nothing to be fixed or healed. It's more about living
Mhm.
and learning to live with the absence of the life that was with us. But if you even consider it that way and learning to live with the loss, when it comes to an ambiguous loss, how do you even start to do that?
Well, I think it's your meaningful morning work that you've got to do. And, possibly in some of those that are a little more traumatic than others, it's going to take a lot more intentional, meaningful work versus, gosh, and I hate to call it the traditional death, but you know what I'm saying, that,
Yeah.
that one kind of lined out like life lines out and ended like it does. These others end in a different way. And so I think it takes just a little bit more mindful and meaningful work. You know what? I'm also going to toss this out because I was preparing for our call today, and I thought, man, this one, because I stay in my lane, Angela. I stay in my lane, and I am the first to admit that I subscribe and I practice and I teach to Dr. Alan Wolfeld's companioning philosophy.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, there are people out there who are credentialed, who are licensed mental health professionals. And I know it's a big, big subject in our world today, but man, let me tell you something. Permission to go get elevated help, permission to do that. And I know when I'm working with a family, I know I'm intuitive enough to know that if it is out of my lane, I want you to go get the help you need to make your way through this traumatic thing that you need to make your way through. And so I'm the first one to say and to endorse, go find somebody who can help you with this one. Now, the one thing in our world, Angela, the one question that I do want people to ask when they're seeking a mental health professional to help them is I want them to ask, do you understand pet loss? Do you understand loving an animal and the human animal bond? And no shame if that mental health professional doesn't get it. No shame. Find one who does. Okay. And because I want you to be with a heart, I want you to be with a heart who understands that bond because it is a different relationship, right? It's a different relationship. And I'm not saying it's bigger or more or better or worse or less, or I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's different. And so you've got to find somebody who can empathize with this kind of a situation to help you. And I just have seen too many instances where people have called a mental health professional and that person didn't get it. And again, no shame, but find somebody who does.
Well,
Because
that's just like looking for a professional photographer. You can find
right,
somebody who will take pictures of you and your dog together, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they understand the dog's behavior, how to connect with that dog, how to appropriately pose and see that dog and see your relationship with that dog. That's why, I mean, of course, that's a selfish perspective on my part because I'm a professional dog photographer, but I encourage people to look for people who are specialized in this business because we get it. We
yeah,
understand. And when it comes to people who are able to counsel you or coach you on pet loss, most of us have been through it. Most of us have entered into this business because we loved and lost,
yeah,
and we
yeah.
understand and we empathize,
Mhm.
right?
Yep, exactly. And and you and I both know this. I've been there, you've been there, but I've not done your journey. You've not done my journey. So at the end of
Yeah.
the day, I want to sit here and I want to make space for your journey and what's going on, and that's the healthy companion that we seek out to walk with us. But again, it may be a situation, and boy, if I ever was companioning with a family or they're with me and they said, I just think I need more than you, that doesn't hurt my feelings at all. In fact, yes, please, I need you. Our world harbors too much of unresolved grief to include these things that we talk about with our animals, from runaway to, to rehome to all this other kind of stuff. Those, while we live with, I totally agree with you. We live with those in our heart. Sometimes those holes may be a little more raw wound seeping than other holes. And it's just to do what we need to do. Gosh, who doesn't go back? I go back to my childhood dogs and I wish I would have done some things differently. And I feel bad about, you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever age you are, and you don't know any better. You don't know any better. And so that's life. That's life,
But we can
right?
also flash back to the conversation we had about talking to children about grief and unresolved grief. And so many times, I know what happened to me. Lady went to the farm.
Yep.
I was taught unresolved grief. I was taught ambiguous loss without even knowing it. Whatever happened to Lady? I don't know. So we have to do better for our children in that respect.
Right. And we have to do better for ourselves. We do better that sure, yeah, you know what? And I'm just writing up a scenario right now for a talk I'm about to give. You know what? I think you and I are a little bit different. Tough conversations, I'm okay with tough conversations. I really am okay with them. But some people aren't. And again, no shame for that. No shame whatsoever. But life is full of tough conversations. And so to approach them with an openness, to approach them with a humble nature, to approach them with a teach me, Angela. Teach me about why you did what you did. Teach me about why you believe what you believe, and here's how. Let's connect, as I see it differently. We live in a world right now that if you see it different than I do, then you're bad. You're bad. We live in a world that instead of me having a tough conversation with you, I'm probably going to text you. Okay. I'm just going to, because that's easier to do it that way. Or we're
Right.
going to do stuff like that. And it's just, we continue to miss connections in there because that one was too hard to do. So I'm not going to do it. And I just, how many times you go out to lunch or dinner and you watch an entire table sitting on their phones and not even communicating with each other. And I find that, that scares me for the, God, I'm sounding like my grandmother right now. Scares me for the future of our world,
Import
Holy,
kids, get
yeah,
off my
exactly. Right? My goodness. Oh my goodness, my goodness. Yeah. So there you go. There you go.
What words of comfort or encouragement can you offer to somebody who is currently going through ambiguous loss?
First of all, permission to have your feelings, whatever they are. If they're guilt, if they're anger, if they're hate, whatever it is, if you hate that fence, if you don't like your ex, whatever it is, permission to have those feelings. The second round is find some ways to find peace with that. Because again, if we live with those emotions of anger and hate and guilt and all that, they eat us up. They eat us up. And so find the way that for you, whatever it is, that you can start to feel some peace, you can start to feel some hope again, you can start to see some light again. And everybody is going to do it differently, from rituals to reading to podcasts, to journaling, to lighting a candle, whatever that ritual is that gives you the morning work and the movement in your grief journey, then you got to tap down and you got to do that. And you got to be mindful and you got to be intentional about it. And when it creeps up, And just like you said a few minutes ago, when the grief and the guilt come knocking, when the grief and the anger come knocking, when the grief and the, you know, whatever it is, when they come knocking, invite them in. Don't push it down. I always kind of equate this to that soda bottle, that I've shaken up, and now all of a sudden something happens, and it just all brings up to the surface. It's like opening that soda bottle at once. After you've shaken that bottle up, it's going to just explode everywhere. I want us to take that cap off a little bit at a time. And I want you to do your morning work to help you make movement. And here's what else I want you to know. Do I for a second believe it's easy?
No.
No, not for 1 second do I believe it's easy. Not 1 second. I want you to know it's going to be hard. It sucks. It's just going to be all those things, but don't push it down. Don't push it down. And
If
if
it
you
was
need to
easy,
get professional help, huh?
if it was easy, everybody would do it instead
Right?
of walking
Exactly.
around like a hot mess all day long.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. 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 How'd we do? How'd we do, you think?
I appreciate you.
Oh, right. But thank you for continuing to carry this education flag. Thank you for that. I know it's not an easy one, so go you. I fangirl you.
I fangirl you.
No.
I think it's really important to address a big issue our nation is facing right now: the ever-growing number of animal surrenders. The shelters and rescues in my area are in crisis mode, just as I'm sure the shelters and rescues in your area are in crisis mode. Many families are facing difficult decisions due to financial hardships, housing instability, personal health challenges. It's critical for us to approach these situations with empathy and understanding rather than judgment. Surrendering a pet can be an incredibly painful situation in which one might find themselves, and having others cast blame only adds to the emotional burden. They need our compassion, our support, our resources, and our advocacy for solutions that can help keep pets and their families together. Now, caveat: none of this applies to people who surrender their pets because they just had a baby and don't have the time, or gave up their sugar-faced dog because they'd rather have a puppy. People like that are just straight up assholes who never should have been permitted a pet in the first place. Thanks for joining us at the Companions Collective. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with a friend or two. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you could leave us a review or rating on your podcast platform. Until next week, tell your dog I said hi.